Okay, here we go. I hope this is working. I've been messing with a lot of the settings here on YouTube, and it seems like the stream is healthy. It seems like I have an excellent connection. I'm seeing people in the chat, and we're talking. So very different from last week and all the problems I had there. I went through and did a complete deep dive on a bunch of the settings in my streaming software. So hopefully this will be working out really well for everybody. I also was able to find some advanced settings in YouTube to try and lower the latency of the stream. And hopefully what that means is that I will be able to see your chat messages much more quickly. So again, shout out Zivanoa and Blaze Ingram. Thanks again, guys, for being here live on the channel. It's always great to be able to chat with you guys. Let me just fiddle around here with my desktop since it looks like everything is actually working. I'm also recording the bitrate or the stream so that just in case anything goes wrong like did last week, it isn't lost to the interwebs. Got it right the first time. I keep messing up the videos, so. But I'm learning, right? I'm learning, right? See, look, I even got a video now within a video, and as you can see, I can switch cards. So, for instance, I'll show you guys. I've got a technical difficulties card. Hey, Mike, how's it going, man? So I've got a technical difficulties card, you guys, in case anything goes weird again. If you see that, please be patient, but I'll show you guys a little preview. So anyways, just a little preview. If you see that, all is not lost. Hopefully I'm still alive. Now, I will warn you guys, my internet here has been bouncing a lot lately, and I don't know if it's because of the coronavirus or what. It seems like there is something going on, though, since it started. Maybe it's because more people are working from home. The lines are more stressed or whatever. We've also been having weird power issues. Not like blackouts or anything, but just the other day some transformers blew and stuff, and I think it's just because everybody's working from home kind of thing. But yeah, so let's dive right in. Station identification here. Welcome to the Roberson Rebellion. This is a Rebel's Guide to Pop Culture and Gaming. I'm your host, Sean Owen Roberson, aka Rebel One. And I'd like to invite you to enlist in the Rebellion. Join me every week for live interactive episodes. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button and share it with your friends if you don't mind. I'd appreciate it. And that little bell icon probably helps too, because this is a lot. I do like to do this live as much as possible. So again, thanks to everybody in the chat. And please just go ahead and fire away. The beginning of the episode, I like to do some fan questions. So I'm going to do at least one fan question from comments, because I know there's a lot of people that can't catch my show because of whatever time they work or something like that. So in that case, I'm going to be making sure that I get at least one or two fan questions in every episode, so that fans that aren't able to catch the show live are still able to participate in the discussion. So the fan question I got this week is from J Solars 2. He says, "Hey Sean, I love the show. I can't watch live as I work nights, but sub to the channel now. Thank you, sir. Thank you. As to moral choices in role-playing, have you played the Dragon Age video games? It is one of my favorites, and a big part of why I like them is the difficult choices you are often forced to make in the game. There is no clear-cut good choice or bad choice. You make the best choice you can according to your character and live with the consequences and keep forging ahead. I try to emulate that style of storytelling whenever I can." And that I agree, Jay. This is one of those things. This is why I really am a fan of tabletop role-playing games. If you have nothing beats sitting at a table with some buddies, or not buddies, maybe new people you haven't met before, right? But sitting at a table with some friendly people, everyone, a good game master or storyteller, and then having kind of like an impromptu story told, cooperative storytelling. That's really great. And a good game master, good players will not just play the good parts of their character, they also play the bad parts of their character, right? They'll play up the hindrances or the penalties or the character's hubris. Excuse me. So, yeah, I really liked the Dragon Age video games. I actually read the Dragon Age novel. It wasn't that bad. And I played the first Dragon Age game all the way through. I played Mass Effect, the Mass Effect trilogy, and Dragon Age all the way through. And with most of the Mass Effect and the original Dragon Age game, I got like the completionist unlocks and things like that because I did just about everything you could in those games. They were really fun and really great. Not as big a fan of Dragon Age 2. I think there were a lot of design issues with that game, although I will say the art style was pretty sweet. I also enjoyed playing Inquisition, but I think that had some issues that could, I could do a whole review on that. But, part of my problem is I felt like I was more in an MMO theme park instead of an actual carefully crafted single-player experience. So that was a little odd. But anywho, oh yeah, Disco Corpse. What's up, man? Yeah. So Mass Effect 2 was a wild ride. It really was. I love that game. That was the beginning. The opening of that game was so cinematic. I think that could easily, you could turn that into a movie. Just jump right into the story in the middle. That would be a good thing. Maybe do some flashbacks from some of the really cool scenes from Mass Effect 1 and then carry on and hopefully deliver a better ending than Mass Effect 3. I think a lot of that wasn't actually how they built up the story, but how they executed it. But anyways, I could do a whole episode on that. But yeah, I really like the Dragon Age video games. And one of the things that I liked was that there was no right or wrong answer. So when you're playing the game, you interact with a bunch of different characters. And one of the really great things is that there wasn't, if you, for instance, gave certain items to certain characters, they might like it. Other ones might dislike it. So you might upset somebody that maybe you were trying to become friends with, or upset a lover. I mean, I'm heterosexual. I usually went for the women, right? But it doesn't have to be girls. It could be whatever you want in the game. And that was pretty cool because then you could say, well, the girl will get upset, or your love interest would get upset because what you gave them didn't fit their personality. They're like, wow, you really don't even know me. And I thought that was so cool. But also, there were a lot of things where they would agree or disagree with ways you might deal with conflict in the setting. Because as the game progressed, you made more and more important decisions. And you couldn't please everyone. And that was one of the really great things that I learned from that game, is that it's really great to see how the butterfly effect of your different decisions and what can happen. And I would say that anyone who's trying to create a good story, whether it's for a role-playing game, whether it's for a novel, whether it's just for fun, whatever you're doing, I would say that that's one of those things that can really bring a lot of depth and reality to your setting, is when you see the intended consequences of a decision, the unintended consequences, and maybe the butterfly ripple effects that no one expected, even no matter what. Because a lot of times I think we want to say, oh, well, this character had good intentions, I'm going to make sure that these things happen. Well, that's not always the best way to tell a story, and it doesn't always fit certain types of stories or storytelling styles. So keep that in mind. For instance, we look at Greek tragedies, and some of the greatest Greek heroes we have were very flawed individuals that made a lot of huge mistakes and terrible things happen. But that humanity is part of what makes the story so interesting. So yes, again, I love the Dragon Age games. Great call out, Jay, Solars 2. And yeah, I'm going to move on today. So that kind of fit in because we're talking about video games today, doing a computer game review. And if you are a fan of the channel, you have noticed that I talk about a lot of this stuff. So, for instance, I have talked about, today we're reviewing Rimworld, and I have talked about, the PC game before. It's by Tynan Sylvester and his Ludeon Studios. And Ludeon is, I believe, a play on the whole Ludo game, like if you've heard of Ludo, like Ludo narrative theory. So that's game and storytelling theory. So Ludeon Studios, Ludeon. And a lot of stuff I'm about to talk about, actually, you can get a lot of it, you can research a lot of it for free, a lot of the concepts. Yeah, Zivano says, no good deed goes unpunished is a pretty fantastic for world building. Absolutely. And that's the exact kind of point. Note, was it don't let a good crisis go to waste? That's another great thing you can put in your storytelling. But one of the things I will say is, so Tynan Sylvester, the creator of Rimworld, he actually has written a lot of articles about the theory behind how he created this game. And so, and his theories about game design and development. So I would say if you get a chance, go out there. Gama Sutra has some good articles by him. You can look up things like that. You can also go review my episodes on Baby Yoda and storytelling. My episode, What the Heck is Apophenia? And also my episode, Riffs, Moral Choices, and Storytelling. I go into a little bit of different types of detail on this similar subject, which I think is really important for creating verisimilitude. So a realistic, something that feels real, a story that feels real to those who experience it. The other thing I'll say is I do want to, he's not paying me or anything, but I'd like to pimp his book. So, Tynan has this great book. It's called Designing Games, and it's a guide to engineering experiences. I really enjoy it. It has a lot of really great stuff. Another book that I actually used as a textbook when I was going to the University of Texas at Dallas to study game design and design and production for digital products was The Art of Game Design by Jesse Schell. Now, this one's a bit different. This is way more into it's a bit different of a book that looks at games from different lenses. But anyways, these are two really good books. But again, Designing Games by Tynan Sylvester, I think, is a great title for anyone who wants to dive more into his thoughts on a lot of different types of gameplay. But when it comes to the Apophenia, again, check out the previous episodes, and I'm going to dive right in to Rimworld. So a quick overview, you can see right here in this video, this trailer that's playing here, this Rimworld is a fantasy or science fiction colony simulator. So if you've played like SimCity or The Sims, it's kind of in the middle of those with guns. But it's also very simulationist in a lot of ways. A lot of things, it's fairly abstracted, but compared to The Sims, you're actually growing your food. Your characters have to sleep and eat, and if they don't, one of the great things about the game is that it also is simulating the characters' emotions. So characters come with different personality traits, and those personality traits might be that they're hard to get along with, or maybe they're a night owl. They like to sleep. They like to be up at night and sleep during the day. Maybe the character's pretty or ugly, or maybe they, all different types of things. So what that means, though, is that characters will interact with each other, and they will like and dislike each other for different reasons, or depending on what might happen in the game. And these things are all tracked in a happiness tracker, assigned points values. So when things start going bad, when they're getting hungry, maybe they slept in a cave that you've set up, so they're not very happy about that. They were wounded in a raid by raiders previously, and then their girlfriend breaks up with them, or maybe rejects their proposal for marriage or something like that. Well, suddenly you've got some dude that's going to go around and he starts doing crazy stuff. He has a tantrum, and so what can happen is they will start doing things like attacking people around them, or maybe they'll just wander off outside and won't respond to any orders that you give them. They also all have skills. So what this means is that if you want your colony to function, pyromania, if you want your colony to function, you need them to be doing the work. And sometimes what that means, though, and other times bad things are happening. Maybe it's freezing cold outside, and this character gets depressed after their girlfriend gets shot by raiders and killed, and they wander out into the snow and die of hypothermia, right? So these are the kind of things that can happen in the game, and it starts to feel very real. And another thing is, for instance, you think, they start going around, maybe they get in a fist fight with somebody else or start bashing stuff around them. Okay, well, that's one thing. But I remember one time a character attacked a dog and killed the dog. And I was so upset. I was like, how dare you do that? And this is a character that I liked before that, but they did this, and they were, for me, they were in the doghouse, right? But it was terrible. And, you get these tantrum spirals, too, where, well, now the person who owned the dog gets upset, or maybe they own the dog, and it gets even worse, and they go into some deeper dive. So this is the perfect example of when we're talking about apophenia, right? Where you have things that are procedurally generated events that when they start intersecting, the intersections start to line up in our brains, and we start discerning a story, a narrative out of it. Okay, so you need to keep that in mind. That is the power of apophenia at work, and Tynan Sylvester wrote specifically about this. That's why the game tracks bodily injuries, because that feels very personal. That's why they get arrested for 2 weeks. Yeah, I'd freaking lose it. That's what I've got in the chat. Yeah, absolutely. And so these are the kind of things that I think really start to drive the game home. Other times, maybe there's also so the whole core story of the game is that you are some colonists that crash land on a Rimworld. So just like in Star Wars, or if you're familiar with the best television show ever, now I can't say it, Firefly, right? So then these characters live on this outer rim with that kind of a Western lawless aesthetic. Well, you've got to build up your colony and defend yourself, go hunting in the wilds. Maybe you'll get attacked by raiders. Maybe one of those raiders is related to one of the characters in your party, in your colony. All these different types of things. Maybe they're enemies, so they're happy when that person dies. You never know what's going to happen in Rimworld, and it starts to kind of be that. Is it a trauma tracker simulator? Bly's asks. Yeah, it does have a trauma tracker and simulator. So that's one of the fun things and you can even give people cybernetics and stuff like that. The type of a treatment and different things that you can do. It's really neat. But those things start to feel really realistic when you're playing the game. Yeah, peg legs. So these are some of the things that make the characters feel very real, even though the art style is actually very abstract, I would say. There's psychological trauma also happens. Oh, by the way, my chat bot, if you, depending on what you say, it might try and block what you're saying. Have fun kicking dogs now, is what someone said. I'm going to show that chat. I don't know why it was blocking that one. Kicking dogs, okay. Usually it just blocks curse words. But anyhow, that's kind of the core gameplay loop, and then you can try and build up your colony. You can actually interact with other colonies and have good or bad relations with them. You can send out caravans. You can do all types. It's a really cool game. You can do all types of stuff, and then eventually you're going to try and maybe leave the Rimworld and get to another planet. That's the core gameplay loop. There's also a really great DLC out for it now, the royalty DLC. But I'm here just going to be mainly talking about the core game. I will say that without doing a whole review on that I think that DLC is definitely worth it. But that would be, again, a whole nother side subject. So some of the things that, the core gameplay loop is just that you're going to try and keep your settlers happy, keep them alive, overcome different random events that are going to happen. As you saw in the thumbnail for my video, they actually have different AI storytellers. And so that is actually really intelligent too, because that's a way that Tynan Sylvester is taking these algorithms, right? He's taking these algorithms and turning and he's personifying them as storytellers. So one of them, for instance, is Phoebe Chillax. That's the basic one, and she has a really cutesy picture with a little alien squirrel thing, and she's going to let you build your base, and not a lot of terrible things are going to happen. And there's Cassandra Classic, who looks more like a businesswoman, a futuristic businesswoman, and with her you're going to get that rising difficulty that you might expect from a lot of games. And I usually play now on Randy Random, And Randy Random, it's just, who knows what's going to happen. One day you could get the plague, the next day a meteor could be coming to blot out the sun, and then there's nuclear toxic fallout for 6 months. And stuff like that goes nuts. There's a cold snap that kills all your crops. It could be bad thing one after another, and then a string of good things, or maybe only one good thing, and then a whole bunch of other bad things that happen. So, yeah, someone said I'd say that Rimworld is less horror themed, but you can really get a sense of dread once an infestation shows up. That's right, Zivanoa. It's interesting the kinds of especially the settings and the storyteller you use, and then I'm going to get into it in a second. The mods that you use, there's a huge modding community. It's very great with the Steam Workshop integration, but with that you can have a lot of really interesting experiences with the game. But yeah, dog kicking is a good alternate expletive. Those are some of the basically the core gameplay loops, and what I'll say is that the game also procedurally generates a planet every time you play, and you can use a seed to change the mathematics on how that comes out. So if you want to play something similar or different every time, you can. But it's really neat, and then you can travel all over different factions around the map. So depending on what type of biome, what type of area you crash land in, that can make a huge difference, right? I haven't done an Arctic ice sheet playthrough, but people have done it. That seems nuts. The craziest playthrough I think I did was I had a guy. You can start out as a tribal instead of a normal colonist that has knowledge of a lot of different technology. You research in the game too and unlock different technologies. Well, I started out as a tribal who knew nothing, had nothing. He started out naked, and I was able to build a pretty cool, and it was in a jungle, a pretty cool little tribal getaway, kind of like those guys you see on YouTube that dig like a pool in a little house and stuff. That's what it felt like. And I got a couple other people that joined, and then of course he was eaten by a bear. He ran into a bear, attacked him while he was out gathering some stuff, and it was so game over after that. But other times I've had a lot of fun playing the game, lots of replayability. So that's one of the things that I like to rate games on is replayability, right? So that's one of the first things I'm going to say. If you like, friggin' space bears, that's right. They hate our way of life. The replayability of this game is pretty fantastic, especially when you combine in the modding community, but even just the base game. There's a ton of replayability, a ton of challenge available, and if you start adding in the DLC content and a lot of the choices you get to make, it gets really great. It doesn't really have a scripted storyline, but I would say that the way that Tynan and Ludeon I think originally was mostly contractors that worked with Tynan, and now I think he's grown to have quite a few much more on tap employees. The way they've made this game, there's just a ton to it, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, and most of the people I've showed it to have just gone nuts and played it for weekends and weekends, and then just kept going and going, and they try and leave and then they come back. It's really hard to put down. One of the Zivanoa has 183 hours so far. I've got hundreds of hours, and that's doesn't even count the beta or the alpha before it even came to Steam. So there's a ton of replayability here. Plus, if you add in the mods, there's mods for Lord of the Rings, there's mods for The Witcher, there's mods for Star Wars. There's mods for Warhammer 40,000, Warhammer Fantasy, your generic fantasy, like kind of a Dungeons and Dragons, high fantasy type stuff. There are mods for futuristic tech. There's mods where you can actually turn your colony into a flying spaceship. So this is a great game. The mods, I usually run somewhere about 60, 70 plus mods. I'm very careful about which ones I pick, but it's great what you can do with the mods. A lot of them are lightweight. They do something simple. I like those kind of mods. And you can just go into when you go into the Steam Workshop, go in there and just sort it by the most popular mods over the last 3 months. You can check a box to make sure that the mods are for the new 1.1 update of the game. And yeah, you can just go in and see these are mods that a lot of people play. They've also, in the 1.1 update, which came out when they dropped the No One Expected It DLC, they hadn't really announced that it was going to happen. Suddenly one day there was just a full-fledged $20 DLC for the game, so that was really cool. It's downloadable content for anybody who doesn't know what DLC means. That brought in a lot of improvements to the modding scene and the loading speed of the game and a lot of stuff like that. Vanilla isn't worth it. I would say vanilla is worth it. I would just say the DLC is awesome. Vanilla, I really enjoyed vanilla. In fact, I tweeted to Tynan that he did a really great job when the 1.1 came out, because I played it without any mods, and it was night and day from when I played it when it was back in before it even hit Steam in the beta or alpha phase or whatever. So it's a sweet game. But I would say with the mod, you can just do so much. Anything that you can imagine, basically, you can set up. So I just there's even more depth there with all the modding. And a very active modding community. This is actually, you look at it and you say, what is this? It's actually a really great game, and it's one of the most popular games on Steam. So definitely check it out if you haven't. So after the replayability, after the mods, let's talk about graphics. So as you can see in the trailer, the graphics are actually pretty cool, especially when you zoom out and you're considering how much territory is being simulated while you play the game. It simulates a whole bunch of territory right around your base. That's pretty neat. When you zoom in, the graphics start to look a little more cartoony. They are based on the style of, if you've seen Prison Architect, that game. There are some mods that I like where you can see their hands and you can see their legs, which is cool because then you can see what pants they're wearing. I mean, that is one thing that's cool is they're dolls, so whatever kind of clothing they're wearing or weapons they have, you can see that. That's pretty cool. A lot of games don't have that. So that's one of the plus sides of having a simpler graphics solution here, is that you can really see the detail of what the characters have. And I mean, these items, part of the importance of that is that these characters, they're using items that you build or that you purchase from a trader, and they have quality. The quality of the craftsmanship of items is really, oh my gosh, you guys are killing me. I've got some comments here. You had me at pants. Has pants 10 out of 10. Is this a joke about that Blood and Banes artwork? I mean, I got that fixed before it print. All right, guys. the vampire artwork, but yeah, so that's one of the cool things, is that the crafting that your characters do, the skill that they have, what they can create or can't create when trading groups come in and you're able to get these items or take it off of the body of some dead raider. So these are some of the really cool things about it, just the detail in the world and the items. It does not feel generic at all. But these graphics may not be everyone's cup of tea, but in general, and they have there's an artist, Oscar Patoki. I hope I'm getting his name right. And he actually works for Ludeon now. I think as a contractor, he does contract art for them, but he also has mod packs that you can get that update the graphics of the entire game. And it's subtle, but it's worth it. So check that out too. Overall, I would say the graphics are about an 8.5 out of 10. Once you get used to them, it's actually really great. I personally would maybe prefer something just a little bit more gritty or realistic looking. But overall, I think it functions. It's extremely functional. The sound. Now, that's one category that usually sound is really tough for smaller budget or indie games. Not that this is necessarily, I would call this a small budget game at this point, because it's been in development for so long and it's been done so well. But it really did start as an indie game, and it has hit a bigger time now. But the sound is amazing. I really like it. The music is thematic. It can change depending on what's happening. And there's the different animal sounds and different things that are out there. It's just right. It doesn't feel too intrusive. I've played the game for a zillion hours, and the only sound mod I usually use is a sound mod that quiets the open and door closing sound. But sometimes I forget to turn that one on, and it's not that big a deal. In the new DLC, they actually had the same artist who does. I mean, it's a lot of guitar and really folksy type stuff. It really hits the right theme for the game, that Western sci-fi theme, and the new DLC has a whole bunch of new music. It's almost worth it just for the music, right? So that is really cool. So the sound, I would say that's pretty close to a 10 out of 10. You could maybe get a little bit cooler sound effects out in there or something, but overall, I think it really works for the game. Unique value. That's one thing I like to rate games on as well. A lot of games aren't unique. They're cookie cutter. And, like if you've played a game on your iPhone or whatever, they're usually pretty terrible. And I would just say that this is not that. This game is very unique. I don't know anywhere else that you can get this same kind of experience at this quality level. The user interface is good. I should probably add that as a category. Yeah, I would say that the unique value of the game is very high. Some people may have played Dwarf Fortress. That's actually coming to Steam in an official release sometime in the future, whenever Tarn and Zach Adams are able to finish it. If you're familiar with that, there's some other games like Nomoria, which didn't do very well. But mostly we're talking about Dwarf Fortress. There are some games that are hit the similar genre, but it's not quite the same thing. Yeah, it's one of those things that that I think that there's something really neat here, and even though there are some similarities to Dwarf Fortress, I mean that's good. It has a lot of the good things, and I think the characters have a lot of depth. It's really hard to match the depth in these characters, and that's my favorite part of the game as the colonies grow. Mike says, "I'm thinking about buying it right now." Steam, Mike. If you do, I think you're going to like it. I'll just be honest. I think you're not going to regret it, buddy. And if you want, let me know. I can share like a list of my mods or something with you. Some of the people are talking here in the chat about their base defense strategies. And I'm not, it's funny because I'm not one of those guys I don't like tower defense games. I kind of like real-time strategy games, but a lot of times I feel like it's more of a click fest than a decision fest. If anyone's familiar with the old Kohan Immortal Sovereigns game, that's like my gold standard for a really great real-time strategy game, because it's more about strategy, real-time strategy, not real-time, click-based tactics. But a lot of people talk about, hey, this really does come down to there's a lot of stuff that can happen, especially when you're playing not on Phoebe Chillax, but on Cassandra Classic or Randy Random. On the harder difficulties, you get more raids from raiders, or there's these mechanoids that can show up, or these aliens that can invade your base and tunnel in through the bottom of it and stuff. And so you can get some really crazy stuff happening in the game, and that's a lot of fun. And a lot of it's about how do you build your base. I like to do mountain bases where I tunnel into the side of a mountain so that bad guys can't get at me. But there's all types of stuff that can happen in the game, and that's a really fun part about it too, is the strategy aspect of it. I think the game is really awesome. There's something really unique here that anybody could enjoy, just about. And as long as you can read and you don't mind clicking buttons. About the user interface for the game, I say that with the complexity of the game, I think the user interface is pretty top-notch. I have seen a mod that I haven't tried out yet where you can right-click and it brings up the user interface options that you've most recently used. I think I'm excited to try that out. But otherwise, I think that it's very, very usable, especially if you've come from, say, Dwarf Fortress and you want to do a comparison. This is like light years ahead. And there's some great mods out there that add even more depth and functionality to the UI, which, again, a lot of the anything that I might say, would normally say maybe a little bit of a short failing, Well, it's really a lot of it's really easily resolved by mods, or they take some of the cool functionality from mods and move it into the core game. They're really great about integrating great ideas from the community, so I like that. I have the royalty add-on. Mike Heckman asks if anyone has the royalty add-on. I do have it. I think it's 100% worth it because it adds a lot of game systems. But everybody else, you can tell them what you think about that in the chat. Long story. Okay, we keep talking about it. Everybody's saying it's fantastic. Yeah. My opinion on it is, I know a lot of people squawked. They say, "Oh, $20 for a DLC," and I'm like, okay, so this DLC isn't one of those DLCs where they just add the stuff that's easy to add to a game, right? The Tynan and his team, I think it was mostly his I don't want to say the B team, but his team, his development team he's put together that worked on this. But his team basically executed something that it's not just like, oh, we're going to add a few different metals or rocks that you can find in the game. We're going to add a few items. We're going to add a few pieces of clothing, okay? They could have gone that route, but that's really covered really easily by modding. And modding is really easy for this game. It's easier than modding HTML, essentially. And the thing that I'll say that they did really great with the mod, besides adding all the great new music and some, they've added a new faction, which is very interesting. And basically, if you ally with them, they're a royal empire that's out on the outer rim, and if you ally with them and you do favors for them, they ask you, hey, will you do this for us, blah blah blah. You can also turn against them, but if you ally with them, then you become a character, and your colony becomes a member of their royalty, and they give you cybernetic chips that you can install in that character, and that character gains psychic powers. So it's pretty cool because there's also psychically attuned weapons and things like that. The reason I think it's really great in the game is that it's adding new game systems. The questing system, the psychic amplifiers and different things that you can get for your characters, the new cybernetics. These are new game systems, not something that's easy to add in a mod. So this is something that mod creators are going to be able to take these systems and do even cooler things with, right? And so that's what I think is one of the great values of the game. And it also includes things like being able to build throne rooms and royal bedrooms and things like that. So anyways, I think that those systems, the quest systems, the psychic systems, all those things, the faction systems are really neat and are going to bring a lot more depth to the game as it continues to grow. So I think it's totally worth it. In a lot of ways, a lot of people say, oh, it's just worth it to support them. And I think absolutely. But I think for the value that you get and the value that we're going to see explode on and have seen exploding on the mod scene due to the continued refinement of the core game code, it's much tighter now. It loads much faster. I see much less crashes. And it was already pretty stable anyways. But, I'm throwing in 80, 100 mods and it was still stable, right? That's crazy. That brings a lot of value. So I would say that mod is that DLC is definitely a 9 out of 10 for me. On the UI, I'm going to say it's probably an 8 out of 10. I have seen some things that I think could be done better, but in general, I think it's pretty great. I think it solves a lot of the core problems, probably 8.5, maybe even a 9, actually. So combine that with the unique value of the game, which I think 10 out of 10. The total score I'm going to give the game is a 9 out of 10. The only things I'd like to see are maybe a little bit improved or grittier character art. I've noticed there's some cool mods where they add like facial animations or chat bubbles that instead of having it chat between characters just come up in a text log, you actually see the chats popping up between the characters, kind of like a la comic books between them. I really like that mod, for instance. There's some things like that I feel like, wow, you guys really could put this in the core game, or I don't know, maybe find out who made that and pay them or what. I don't know what you need to do, but a lot of those things I really think should be in the core game. So there's a little bit of stuff like that. Those are more of cherry on top stuff that's easily done with mods. The one big thing is this game doesn't have Z levels. And it doesn't have multiplayer. That's the two things that I've talked about. There's actually a multiplayer mod out there that, as long as you're not running too many crazy mods and stuff like that, they're updating it to the new 1.1, but it lets people play simultaneously on the same map, on the same world map. So that's pretty cool. But you have to be part of the same faction. It's player driven. So if players can do that, I really wish that there was a there was an official multiplayer mode. If players can tack that on, I mean, modders can tack that on, then I think that Ludeon definitely should take a look at that. The other thing, like I said, is Z levels. So if you play Dwarf Fortress, other games, you go up in levels, down in levels, right? You've got the X and the Y, and then there's the Z, which is your up and down. Well, if X and Y is north, south, east, west. So there are floors and there are ceilings in this game. But yes, Zivanoa, yeah. So you could have multiple camps run by a player each, or the two players basically run the same faction, so you could even hop around. One person could both be working at one camp, and then the other could jump to a foraging team or something like that. But the Z levels would be, I think, bring a lot to the game, especially if you could add an isometric view to it. And I know that wouldn't be easy necessarily, but I think it'd be done, because it happens in Dwarf Fortress, right? So I think something like that would really add a lot to the game, especially if you had a viewer for that. You could see the cool stuff, see the colony you built from an angle and stuff. That would be really, really cool. And clearing overhead mountains. Sometimes there are mountains that you can't clear them overhead. So again, it's kind of like this hidden, unmodifiable Z level. Wouldn't it be cool if you could build some stairs and a little lookout up on that mountain that they could shoot down at raiders from that position or something. So there's some things like that I feel like, hey, that'd be really great. But overall, for me, from Rebel 1, my score is going to be a 9 out of 10 for Rimworld. I think this is an amazing game. I think it's a great, terrific value. You can just check out the Steam reviews if you have any questions on a lot of this, but it's just a great game. It's got great reviews. It's unique gameplay. All the different parts meld really well into a delicious stew. So I would definitely say it's definitely more than the sum of its parts. If you were to look at just the sound or just the graphics, maybe some of those are only 8 or 9 out of 10, but I think in the end, you maintain a really strong 9 out of 10 score for the game. So that's my review. I hope you like it. And before I clear out of here, I was just wondering if anybody had any questions for me, any other feedback they wanted to get. I've tried to include a lot of people's stuff here, see if you guys have any thoughts, parting thoughts before I sign off. Yeah, Blythe says isometric views are my favorite. He's from a drafting background. He does a lot of drafting. So yeah, that would be really cool. And for instance, I've seen some really cool isometric viewers that you can get for like Dwarf Fortress and stuff. And when I saw that, I was just like, wow, it actually adds a lot. It adds a lot of depth to it. So I think that's pretty cool. Okay, well, I'm not seeing a lot of last minute comments, can you? Okay, so I have Disco Corpse asked, can you play a colony forever or does it end? So you can. You actually don't have to leave the Rimworld. And this is actually one thing that I think that they could add is you can have. So animals can have, babies or whatever, can reproduce. So if you say are breeding, they have these things called muffalos. They're like furry buffaloes that you can milk and get fur from or whatever. Those can reproduce, but your colonists can't. So that is something that I think would add a lot to the game. But also, there's a lot of places that if there's violence against children in games, the games are going to get certain types of automatic ratings. And that could be a whole new issue, right? If you work in the games industry, you might know about this kind of stuff. Like, for instance, some of the Fallout games, the early Fallout games, they took out the ability to harm children in certain scenes of the game because they're maybe getting hit by sporadic gunfire in a gunfight in a town. Well, suddenly the game's banned in Germany or something, right? Or the EU or whatever. So that might be a concern. I don't know. But there are mods that add that in. But it would be cool if you could have children and they could grow. I was playing, my buddy got Surviving the Aftermath, my buddy Matt, and so we were checking it out the other day. I was just he was streaming it. I was on Skype with him, and we were just chatting, and he was playing the game and stuff. And it's pretty cool. You have kids, and if you put them in school, they get more skilled, and they become more useful colonists and stuff like that. So that would be something that could be add to it. But in general, that's the only thing I think that doesn't give it that longevity. Your characters do age. So you could play the game for a long time. I mean, you could totally try and build a kingdom. You can make multiple settlements. You can attack settlements of NPC factions. You can abandon settlements, destroy stuff, take out bandits, and there's mods that add even more in-depth stuff there. So you could keep playing this for a long time. I've played actually a few that were basically Lord of the Rings games that, I mean, I just played them for a long time, right? Until I finally was like, okay, well, I kind of did what I wanted to do, and I stopped playing. Let's see. When Dwarf Fortress pops onto the market, do you think it is going to be buoyed by Rimworld fans? SQ asked that. Actually, I think it will be. I mean, not that, Dwarf Fortress already has its own following, right? But if we can see a Dwarf Fortress with a decent user interface, and I would say graphical, you go back to just not just UI, but a GUI, a graphical user interface, as opposed to text and key commands, mixed with a decent amount of art. And they are hiring Mayday and some of the other graphic designers that have done a lot of the graphical mod packs for Dwarf Fortress. If you don't, so for those who don't know, Dwarf Fortress is a game that has a really, really cool level of simulation of a lot of things. But one of the big problems with it is there's no art. It literally displays on your screen using ASCII, like different keyboard symbols, right? So, there's a joke about what ASCII looks like, right? So it looks like the first 3 letters of ASCII. But I'd say that, yeah, I think it will boost it. I think there will be a lot. And I think that Dwarf Fortress players are probably going to end up finding Rimworld and realizing that there's something really cool there, too. Let's see. Zevino says, Colin's reproduction is done via Stockholming Raiders. He needs kids when you have pirates. And that's, Disco Corp says, pirate adoptions, I'm in. Yeah, adoption. Yeah, that is one of the things. So when raiders come in and attack, if you can capture them, hopefully they're not bleeding out and don't die immediately. You can capture them, bring it in, and you can set up a prison. And you can put colonists that, your colonists that kick the dog, you can put them in prison. The raider that came in, somebody that murdered his wife, you can throw him in prison, right? You can execute them. And now that doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want. I mean, it's just like a tyrant simulator, but you also see the repercussions and the ripple effects of those decisions because certain people will like it or certain people will hate it, whatever. But that's one of the things you can do is you can bring in raiders or people that have attacked your faction or even people that haven't, maybe you could just basically kidnap people too if you wanted to, like visiting merchants or something. But you can convince them eventually to maybe join your faction. So what I a lot of times do, and it's pretty utilitarian, pretty cold-blooded sometimes, but I'll go through and I'll see the raiders that have attacked. And if some of them have useful skills and personalities, then I'll do my best to rescue them. Because sometimes so many raiders attack, you can't even save all of them when they attacked you in the middle of frozen Arctic winter and they're all dying outside and they're bleeding out and freezing to death and they just attacked you, wounded half your colony. So you're like, well, I can maybe save 1 or 2 of these guys. Which one's it going to be? That's how you're going to make your choice. You're not going to pick the 82-year-old pyromaniac that doesn't get along with anyone. You're going to pick the 40-year-old woman that is really great at gardening and crafting, tailoring clothing or whatever. Maybe she's a really great shot with a gun, whatever. I'm not trying to get sexist with the depiction of what she would be skilled at. It's a procedurally generated game. She might be skilled at all types of stuff, but that person might fit the needs of your colony more, right? So who are you going to save? Well, that's it. Michael Dan, are public executions possible? Yes, they are. I personally don't do this, but I've heard about people putting people in pit fights and making characters duke it out and all types of stuff. But yeah, there's other great skills are smithing, mining, cooking. Some of this stuff is super useful in the game. Hunting. That's one of the things that does suck is if you send someone out to hunt and they get mauled by some animal. But there's again a lot of cool stuff you can do. A lot of long-term gameplay possible. and you can see characters make art. They visit the graves of their friends or their loved ones that have died. You can build little mausoleums. I build mausoleums for a lot of my colonists. Yeah, Zevanoa says you can do a lot of messed up things. It turns out that raiders have organs and the colony needs trained doctors. Yeah, and you can actually sell organs on the market. You could sell slaves on the market too. I mean, the game lets you do a lot of different things. I have heard of people making, people skin hats or something, or chairs. I haven't done that, but it can get pretty gruesome. The game just treats all those things treats a person kind of like an animal, their body, when they're dead. But I would not suggest going cannibal. Cannibal runs are difficult. Most characters are not fans of being cannibals. So, but sometimes you get that Donner Party episode when you play Rimworld, especially on an ice sheet or something. And I've definitely had that happen where someone died and it wasn't that I slaughtered them or killed them because I was going to try and butcher them and do a cannibal thing, but people were hungry and there was a corpse in the freezer because I was trying to wait to bury the guy or whatever, and people went in and started eating him. I was like, no! And then the colonists are freaking out because now they're like, oh, I've succumbed to cannibalism, and it gets crazy. The game gets crazy. So, again, to go back to some of the themes we've been talking about, I've had a lot of fun recording this episode. A lot of the themes that come out of the skillful inclusion of different mechanics, what mechanics to include, what mechanics not to include within this game. So I think that Tynan Sylvester did a really masterclass here for anybody who wants to understand how stories work, why stories work. Just play Rimworld and think about the things that start affecting you. Think about the things that start affecting you and realize, okay, this is why it works. I mean, this is procedurally generated. I'm having this experience that no one wrote that story, but that story, my brain picked that story out of all the other noise, of all the other things that are happening in this colony. That's my story. And why is that? What is it about that that's so cool? So, Crazel, hey, what's up, man? Yeah, so anyways, again, I could go on for a while, but this game, again, if you haven't checked out my video on Apophenia, please check that out, and check out the Riffs, Moral Choices, and Storytelling episode. So a little more hints on how to take these kind of themes and bring them into role-playing games that you might be playing. If anyone isn't familiar, I write and design for the Riffs line of products for Savage Worlds. And I'm the product line manager. So these are things that are near and dear to my heart as a gamer and a storyteller, that I think are really, really cool to study and learn about. And after I was in the U.S. Air Force, I went back to school to learn about storytelling, right? So, that's why I'm kind of a geek about this stuff. So I hope everyone's enjoyed the episode. And thanks. I have some love from Zevanoa. Riffs equals win. Thanks, man. So again, thanks to everybody for joining in tonight. I hope that you guys have enjoyed the episode. Please, if you enjoyed it, please give it a like. Please comment down below so that other people that maybe weren't able to join the episode live can get in on the discussion. I'd really appreciate that. And also, hit that bell icon so you can get notified. Because, like, for instance, this week, between internet stuff and for whatever reason the stream wasn't captured last week, the episode I decided to refilm it today on a Thursday instead of the normal Wednesday. So yeah, I'd appreciate that from everybody. Again, thanks again to the great community. I started this channel. I never thought that I'd get so many people following it and participating live. It's been really fun, and I look forward to next week. I'll see if I can do something special in the next week or two. But cheers, guys. You guys have a good night, and I'll check you later. I'm glad everything worked, and I will show you the outro card.